Hi, Oleksandra. Thank you so much for taking the time in this crazy week for you. We met last summer in July. I remember very vividly, it was a few days after Russia bombed the children's hospital. How are you at the moment, and how is it to work under these circumstances that potentially have become even worse?
Thank you for this invitation. Frankly speaking, it's very difficult to live during the large-scale war, and I think it's very understandable that we can't get used to this new normality to live in total uncertainty when you can't plan not just your day but your next several hours because you have no idea what will happen. When you live in constant fear for your beloved ones because there is no safe place in Ukraine where you can hide from Russian rockets. And every day when we go to bed, we have no guarantee that we will get up next morning because war it's a lottery and you have no idea what next residential building will be hit by Russian rockets this night. But despite all this, I must admit that Ukrainians know what we are fighting for. We are fighting for freedom in all senses, for a freedom to be independent country but not Russian colony, for a freedom to preserve our Ukrainian identity and not to be forced to re-educate Ukrainian children as Russian, and for a freedom to have our own democratic choice, like a chance to build a country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating.
Last week we saw some unbelievable scenes from the White House. Zelensky was basically ambushed by the Trump administration. How did you look at this? And you also wrote a piece in the Financial Times this week that you understood also the position that Zelensky is in. Could you elaborate, please?
Last weeks and last days, we hear a lot of political statements about natural minerals, about possible territorial concessions, about Russian interest, uh, even about suits. But the problem is that we don't hear about people. And I think that it's not okay because we must return human dimension in all political process. There are a lot of questions which has to be solved. What will be with more than 20,000 Ukrainian children illegally deported to Russia, separated with their families, and supposed to be adopted by Russians in order to bring them up as Russian citizens? What will be with thousands and thousands illegally detained civilians, men and women, subjected to horrible torture and sexual abuse daily? What will be with people in occupation in general? We speak about millions of people who live in gray zone. They have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their life, their children, their beloved ones. Russian occupation is not just changing one state flag to another. Russian occupation means torture, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves. And we must start to speak about people in this war.
That's the human dimension that's currently missing. Also in the Netherlands, we have a debate about peace. What does peace mean? And you mentioned we need real peace and justice in Ukraine. What, in your view, is real peace? To achieve real peace, what is necessary then?
Let me assume that people in Ukraine want peace much more than anyone else because war is horrible.
Yeah.
Because war probably is the most horrible thing which just can happen in the human life. But peace doesn't come when country which was invaded stop fighting. That's not peace. That's Russian occupation. And probably some people think that, okay, occupation is not good, but at least it decreases human suffering. I must say that it's a wrong approach. Occupation doesn't decrease human suffering. Occupation just make human suffering invisible. And for a lot of people in occupied territories, occupation is not stop of suffering, just a beginning. So we have to take into consideration what peace means, because peace is a freedom to live without fear of violence and have a long-term perspective. And that's not occupation at all. I'm not naive. I understand that we have no potential for current moment to release territories and people who live there in military term. But we have a very huge responsibility between these people, as well as how to make the peace sustainable. Because Putin started this war not because he wanted to occupy just more part of Ukrainian land. Putin started this war because he wants to occupy and destroy the whole Ukraine and go further. He dreams about forcibly restoration of Russian Empire. He sees Ukraine just a bridge to Europe. He thinks about his historical legacy. And the problem is that even after 3 years of large-scale war, despite all human losses, Putin doesn't refuse from his goal because human life is the cheapest resource in Russian state. So in order to achieve sustainable peace, we must discuss not natural minerals, we must discuss security guarantees, which makes for Putin impossible to achieve his goal, not just to postpone it in time.
So that's the real peace that you're talking about. What are the stories that you're hearing from the occupied area? Because you're heading the Center for Civil Liberties, the organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize 2, 3 years ago. So what are the stories that you're working on, and what is it that you're documenting at the moment?
When large-scale war started, we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions. We built a national network of local documentators. We covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And working together, we jointly documented more than 81,000 episodes of war crimes. And
Incredible.
let's be clear, we are not just documenting violations of Geneva and Hague conventions. We are documenting human pain. Because while this war turns people into the numbers, we are returning people their names. That is what we are literally doing. Because people are not numbers, and life of each person matters. So I will tell you one story from our database just to show that there are people behind these
Yes.
numbers. And this is a story of children writer Volodymyr Vakulenko. He wrote beautiful stories for Ukrainian children. An entire generation of Ukrainian children brought up on his Dage's book. During Russian occupation, Volodymyr disappeared. I know his family. His family hoped to the last that he's alive, but just thousands of other Ukrainian civilians are illegally held in Russian captivity. But when Russian army were pushed from Kharkiv region, we found mass graves in forest with dead bodies of men, women, and children there. And in unmarked grave under the number 319, we found dead bodies of this children writer Volodymyr Vakulenko. You can ask me why Russians killed children writer. The answer is simple: because they could, because this is what occupation is about.
And they want to erase the Ukrainian culture.
Putin openly says there is no Ukrainian nation, there is no Ukrainian culture, there is no Ukrainian language. For 11 years, we have been documenting how this was converted in horrible practice. When Russian troops deliberately, physically exterminate active local people, mayors, journalists, priests, children writers, musicians, environmentalists, teachers, any active people of community, how they banned Ukrainian language and culture, how they destroyed and robbed Ukrainian cultural heritage, and how they take Ukrainian children to Russia in order to bring them up as Russians. And this is like just a part, this killing of children writer Volodymyr Vakulenko is just a part of this more broader genocidal policy which Russian states imposed against Ukrainians.
And you're gathering all this evidence of all these war crimes. Why is that so important to achieve justice in the end?
Because all this hell which we now face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Russian troops committed horrible crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. They believe they can do whatever they want. We must break the circle of impunity, not just for people in Ukraine, not just for people who have already suffered from Russian war crimes in different countries, but in order to prevent a next Russian attack to the next nation. There is a very famous Russian proverb: appetite grows during the lunch. And we know from the human history, unpunished evil grows.
There's a room full of Dutch people watching this at the moment. What would you say to them? What can they do to help?
First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to people in Netherlands and other countries for your support and for your solidarity in this dramatic time of our history. It's so important, even from the human point of view, to know that you are not alone, that you are not alone fighting with such enormous opposing power, with such huge and cruel military machine, that there are people in other countries who support you, who support your fight, who support your values. I'm really grateful because it helps us to survive. But the truth is that we still need this assistance because we can't solve this problem in national borders. And I'm not in position to tell people what they can do. There are hundreds of methods how to be useful. I know that Dutch people came to Ukraine to volunteer. I know that Dutch people organize crowdfunding campaigns to collect money and to provide humanitarian assistance. I know the Dutch people organized advocacy campaign to push their own government to provide more support. So hundreds and hundreds of methods can be used. My main message is please act. We need your support. We need your efforts. There is no modest efforts in this war. Every efforts matter.
Just like to say you don't have to thank us, but we want to thank you for everything that you're doing. It's really amazing to see the bravery of the Ukrainian people and keep it up. Let's stay in touch. And just want to thank you a lot for your time in this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oleksandra.